Speaks, sitting across from him, at a small table, string lights overhead, half a glass of wine going warm in her hand. Hess talking loud enough that 2 tables notice Hess, telling a story about himself for the 3rd time tonight, and Shez smiling, but her eyes have gone somewhere else. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere further away. Shez not bored. Shez deciding something. Is he actually like this? Or is he performing for me? Why does this feel like a sales pitch instead of a conversation? He seems so sure of himself. So why do I feel so unsure of him? Wait. Read that last thought again. Confidence doesn't come from how much space a man takes up in a room. It comes from how little he needs the room to prove anything at all. You're not overthinking this. Your body is picking up something your brain hasn't caught up to. Yet every woman who has ever sat across from a man performing certainty, instead of feeling it, has had this exact moment, that flicker of something's off she couldn't quite name. By the end of this you'll know the 7 signals that separate real confidence from arrogance. In disguise, the ones women register in under 4 seconds long before a single word confirms it. Let's get into it. Most men think confidence is something you broadcast, talk louder, stand taller, take up more space, win the room. But the real truth is confidence isn't a volume setting. It's a nervous system setting. It's what's happening underneath a man when nothing is being proven, nothing is being performed, and no one is watching. Arrogance is a man managing how has seen. Confidence is a man who has stopped needing to manage it at all. One is built for an audience, the other exists whether anyone's in the room or not. This is why women can feel the difference before they can explain it. A woman's nervous system is reading micro signals of safety and threat, constantly underneath the words. The pace of someone's breath, the stillness in their shoulders, whether their eyes stay steady or start scanning for a reaction. Arrogance sets off a quiet alarm because it's fundamentally unstable. It needs constant feeding. Confidence sets off the opposite signal. This person is settled, and I can relax around them. And once you understand this difference, you'll start seeing it everywhere, in how a man handles being challenged, how he tells a story, even in how he stands. Still, here's where it shows up. First point 1. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. It's not about how a man enters a room. It's about how he handles being wrong in it. Most people assume confidence means never being caught off guard, always having the comeback, the answer, the win. So most men, especially insecure ones, treat being wrong like a threat to survive. But here's what changes everything. A genuinely confident man can say, I don't know, or actually you're right, without flinching, because his sense of self was never resting on being right in the first place. An arrogant man can't do this. Correction feels like erasure to him. So he fights it, reroutes it, or laughs it off too fast. Picture 2 men at the same dinner table. Someone gently corrects a fact he just stated. The arrogant version talks over her, doubles down, brings up an unrelated win from earlier to restore his footing. The confident version pauses, actually looks at her and says, I didn't know that. That's interesting, and keeps eating like nothing happened. Her mind quietly registers he didn't need to win, that he just wanted to know the truth. That's the whole tell. And when a man can be wrong without unraveling something in the room settles, people stop performing around him, because he's not performing either. That's the moment a woman starts to trust the version of him she's seeing is the only version there is. But that's just how he handles being wrong. Watch what happens when Hes actually challenged. Point 2. This is where it gets really interesting. Confidence and arrogance look almost identical the moment before a challenge, and completely different the moment after. Most people think a strong reaction to being challenged. A sig, speak, N of strength, talk back, fast, defend hard, don't let anyone push you around. But the deeper truth is, defensiveness is not strength, it's alarm. An arrogant man experiences challenge as an attack on his identity, so his body reacts like it's under threat, chest out, voice sharper, jaw tight. A confident man experiences challenge as just information. His nervous system doesn't read it as danger, so his body stays open. Picture a group setting. Someone questions a decision he made in front of others. The arrogant version gets louder, cuts them off, makes a joke at their expense to regain the upper hand, a small tight smile that doesn't reach his eyes. The confident version leans back slightly, actually considers it, and says, maybe walk me through why you do it differently, and means it not louder, not faster, not sharper, but a man quiet enough on the inside that someone else's opinion doesn't rearrange him. She feels the difference in her own body before she can explain it in words. Her shoulders drop a little because nothing in the room needs managing anymore. And that's when a disagreement stops feeling like a threat to the whole relationship and starts feeling like just two people talking. Point 3. And this is the one most people never figure out. It's not what a man says about himself. It's how much room he leaves for anyone else. Most people believe self-promotion is confidence. If you don't sell yourself, no one else will write. But here's what nobody explains. Arrogance is a monologue. Confidence is a conversation. An insecure man fills every silence with his own accomplishments because silence feels like losing ground. A genuinely confident man can sit in silence, ask a real question, and actually wait for the answer, because he isn't extracting validation from the exchange. Hess just present in it. Picture a first date. Hess just told a great story about a promotion at work. The arrogant version immediately pivots to another story about himself, barely pausing for her response. The confident version finishes the story, then asks, "What about you? What's something you're proud of that nobody really asks about?" And then actually listens to the answer without waiting for his turn to talk again. Something in her quietly shifts. Has not performing for me, has actually curious about me. That single shift is worth more than every impressive story combined, because the moment a man makes space for someone else in the conversation, he stops feeling like a highlight reel and starts feeling like an actual person. She could build something with. Point 4. Here's the part no one says out loud. Confidence and arrogance sound almost identical from the outside until you listen for what they need in return. Most people think a man who compliments himself is just being honest about his strengths, but the real truth underneath is this: arrogance needs an audience to agree. Confidence doesn't need anyone's agreement at all. An arrogant man's self-image is fragile enough that it requires constant external confirmation. Laughs at his jokes, validation of his opinions, agreement with his. Takes a confident man's sense of self, holds steady whether the room agrees with him or not needing applause, not needing agreement, not needing everyone at the table to nod along. Just a man whose opinion of himself doesn't rise or fall based on the room's reaction. Picture him making a joke that lands flat. The arrogant version repeats it louder or explains why it was actually funny, chasing the laugh that didn't come. The confident version just shrugs, half smiles, and moves on. Guess that one didn't land, completely unbothered. And here's what changes everything. A woman isn't drawn to a man because everyone likes him. She's drawn to a man who is fine, even when they don't. Point 5. This is where it gets really interesting. It shows up most clearly in how a man talks about other people, especially people he could easily put down. Most people assume confident men are naturally competitive, always comparing themselves to the room. But the deeper truth is that arrogance survives by diminishing others. It needs someone smaller nearby to feel bigger. Confidence has no such requirement. A man secure in himself can genuinely admire someone else's win without it costing him anything. Picture a moment where a friend's business takes off, or an ex gets brought up. The arrogant version finds a subtle way to undercut. It must be nice. He got lucky, a small tightening around the eyes as he says it. The confident version says, "Honestly, that's awesome. Good for him," and actually means it, no edge in his voice at all. Something in her registers quietly. Has not scared of other people's success, and that quiet absence of insecurity is one of the most attractive things a man can carry into a room, because it means there's nothing underneath waiting to spill out sideways at her later when she succeeds at something too. Point 6, and this is the one almost nobody figures out until it's too late. It's not about how a man handles a win, it's about how he handles being ignored. Most people think confidence shows up loudest in a man's biggest moments, the promotion, the achievement, the story that gets everyone's attention. But here's what nobody explains. Real confidence shows up in the moments nobody's watching at all. An arrogant man needs to be noticed to feel like he exists. A confident man is completely fine being the quiet one in the room. Picture a group hangout where the attention naturally drifts to someone else's story for 20 minutes straight. The arrogant version keeps trying to redirect, speak it back, interrupting, one-upping, steering the conversation back toward himself. The confident version just listens, genuinely engaged, asking the other person questions, comfortable being background for a while. Emotional distance in a relationship often starts exactly here, not in the big arguments, but in the 100 small moments where one partner needed to be the center, and the other quietly noticed. Arrogance can't tolerate the background. Confidence doesn't need the foreground, and she notices this before she notices almost anything else. because it tells her something crucial what happens to him on the days she isn't the one giving him attention. Point 7. Here's the part that ties everything else together. Confidence and arrogance both walk into the room looking sure of themselves. Only one of them is actually telling the truth. Most people believe that certainty is the tell that a man who seems completely sure of himself must be confident. But the deepest truth is this: certainty isn't he. The signal consistency is arrogance is a performance, and performances slip the moment the audience changes with a waiter, a stranger, someone who can't do anything for him. Confidence doesn't change costume depending on who's watching because there was never a costume to begin with. Think about that. Picture him with the server at a restaurant. The arrogant version is warm to her at the table, and short, dismissive, faintly condescending to the person taking the order. The confident version treats the server exactly the way he treats her: attentive, easy, unguarded, because there's no one in the room whose opinion has managing. That's the whole test, quietly, every single time. Not what he says to you, what he does with the people who can't do anything for him. And when a man passes that test consistently, without knowing, even being tested, that's when a woman stops watching for red flags and starts actually relaxing into him. Because the version she's seeing is simply the only version that exists. She's back at that same small table, string lights overhead, except this time, it's a different man across from her. Telling a story too. But he pauses halfway through to ask what she thinks. His shoulders are loose. Not performing. Just there. This isn't a checklist for spotting red flags on a first date. It's a completely different way of reading people. One that shows you who someone actually is underneath, who they're trying to be in the 10 seconds before they even open their mouth. Confidence was never loud. It was never the center of the room. It was the one thing in the room that didn't need to be. If you want to know what it looks like when a man builds that kind of quiet security instead of faking it, that's the video I made right after this one. Either way, the fact that you can feel the difference now instead of just sensing something was off means you already see people more clearly than you did 20 minutes ago. That's not nothing. That's the beginning of never getting fooled by the loud version again.